Why is it a big deal? It's a big deal because, they're going to lose their jobs, or some of them will lose their jobs if they get automated away.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Let's bring Jacob Morrison on the line here with us. Jacob, thank you very much for joining us. Your show, 9:30 to 11, the Valley Labor Report. We always appreciate you joining us. And yeah, we got big labor news here this week. There was a deal that was made. It said, hey, look, we're gonna get back to work. The dock workers say we're gonna do that. It was costing Alabama millions of dollars a day. It was costing the country $100 million a day. It was happening during an election. Not great stuff. But the pressure was put on them, and here's what the union members got: 62% increase over a 6-year contract if they're able to finalize this deal. The base pay goes from $39 an hour to $63 an hour. And I'll tell you, if you're pushing unions and stuff, it's a pretty good way to do it right there to make that argument. Hey, here's the question I have for you. I mean, this is a success, right? If they secure this deal, it's a success. They had an offer of 50%. Union wanted 77. They met in the middle-ish at 63. And then there you go. So still huge all the way around. But here's my question for you. Automation was a big talk here. Like, they want to avoid automation. They don't want to have that. If there's an automation technology that comes in, they want to make sure that the people who are in the union are up for the jobs of managing those automations and things like that. Because automation ideally would bring about more productivity and more profit, so you wouldn't have to cut people. That'd be the premise of all of this. Not sure it works out that way in the end, but that would be the premise. Why the fear of automation, and why and how are they able to get this worked in? You would think decisions like this might actually speed up the automation process.
Well, no, because the automation the automation piece of the contract hasn't been agreed to, and that's actually kind of the biggest thing that they said, basically they're accepting the kind of tentative deal on the wage increase as a show of good faith, that both parties are going to try to get to some kind of deal on automation. But, they can't do part of the current contract that has been extended until January 15th is about how they can't implement new automation without it going through, getting approval from the union's new technology committee. And that was one of the big contentions, is that they say that the ports have been doing that. The port in Mobile specifically has been doing that, is implemented new technology that hasn't gone through the union's committee. And they're really upset about that. And so, that's a strike issue. If there's not enough movement as far as the union sees it on automation, then that's something that they'll be striking again in January over. And of course, and why is it a big deal? It's a big deal because, they're going to lose their jobs, or some of them will lose their jobs if they get automated away. I was on vacation last week, went to Disney. And so while I was there, I wanted to go to the picket line. So I went to the Tampa picket line, and I was talking to some folks there. They said that their local, when they started, had almost 1,000 longshoremen working. Now it's down to about 200, and they do like 3 to 4 times as many goods come through the ports as did when they started, right? But if you actually look at the pay of longshoremen, at least over the last 20 years, it's down 11% in the ILA's region. And so, they've got a lot of reasons to be upset at these carriers and concerned about automation. One thing that I think puts a wrinkle in the automation thing is that it's not totally clear that it's actually cost effective, at least at this time with the technology that exists. There have been some studies that have said that I think people think that automation, it just kind of appears that they can just get it super cheaply, but these machines that do some of these jobs are extremely expensive. And so there are at least some studies that say that the automated ports, or the more automated ports, it is not less expensive than the, ports that are operated by longshoremen, and there are also some studies that say that they're not more productive either than the longshoremen. 12 to 15% less productive, at least according to one report. And so, I can't say that I've looked deeply enough into it to say whether or not those are outliers. Those are just some of the things that I've seen, but I think it is enough to say that it's not exactly clear cut, at least at this point with the technology that exists, that it would be a good thing.
Well, I mean, the idea of the lowering the cost is in the long run, right? Like, you get the technology in, it's probably more expensive in the short term, but in the long run, the idea is to eliminate labor cost and therefore drive up profits. I mean, that's it. I mean, I think that's the premise here. In the short term, yeah, it's probably more expensive to bring in this automation piece. But once you eliminate the human component of this, you have a different situation. And that's not good for the worker, obviously. But that's obviously the premise of all of this. What are the chances this does not actually get taken care of? And whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, there's a president dealing with this, I guess, on January 20th when they were sworn in.
Well, I think one of the reasons that they wanted to do it on the 15th is so that they could have another opportunity to strike under a Biden administration, because Biden has already said that he's not, or at least in this go-round, he hasn't said it, in a subsequent strike if he would or wouldn't invoke Taft-Hartley, but he said, quote, "I don't believe in Taft-Hartley." So it's unlikely that he would invoke Taft-Hartley if they were to strike on January 15th, and so that would be at least 1 week where they would be able to strike unencumbered by a president. Kamala Harris, I would imagine, would also not invoke Taft-Hartley, especially without the pressures of an election. And Donald Trump, I think, probably would. I think he probably would invoke Taft-Hartley. So I think that there's a reason that it's January 15th instead of January 21st.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Okay, last question for you, and this I thought was interesting. I don't know if you saw this on Fox News. They were out there with the longshoremen at one of the picket sites, and they asked them, who's supporting Kamala Harris out here, and they were very just like, whatever, we don't care. There were no adamant Kamala Harris supporters. What do you think about Joe Biden coming off the ballot, and good old Union Joe, Lunch Pail Joe, saw two union workers making out with his dad. Not with his dad, he was with his dad while two union workers made out at fictional factories and then went into their individual factories because they were in love, Joey. Why are you doing this? They're union members. They're in love. That's sort of the message he told people. But my question to you is this. Do you think there's been a big drop-off in the amount of support amongst unions for old Lunch Pail Joe to Kamala Harris?
It's just difficult to say. I mean, the support for Harris over Biden in basically every other demographic has increased. I mean, more people in basically every demographic are supporting Harris over Biden, and so it's difficult to believe that unions are that union members would be kind of the one demographic that is different in that way. I know that the Teamsters member polls kind of show some of that dynamic, but I would just reiterate that the first poll that was done was in person at the Union Hall, which is going to be more active union members, and the others were online polls, which may be a little bit different.
Well, what did they draw from that?
What do they?
The union leadership said, "Okay, we can't do this." They drew the conclusion that they can't endorse because of those online polls. They trusted them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, what do you make for that?
Yeah. I mean, I really honestly don't know what to make from it. I think that Sean O'Brien has a certain affinity for Trump. I think that's kind of what I would make from it. But back to the longshoremen, I just want to make sure that folks understand that when. If you oppose the strike and like what happens with as far as them getting their wage increase, the money that they would be getting with that wage increase that these hundreds of longshoremen in Alabama are going to be getting now, every dollar that wouldn't have gone to them if they hadn't struck and been successful would have gone to, let's remember, foreign carriers, these, European and French billionaires who made $400 billion in profits over the last couple of years. And it would have gone to them. It would not. And whereas now, with these longshoremen getting this raise, that's going to be money that's going to them, yes, but also into the broader American economy. And so, I think it's really in everybody's interest that these folks get their raise. And, you said base wage of $39 an hour. That's true in a sense, but it's also worth noting that the starting wage right now of longshoremen on the East and Gulf Coast is $20 an hour. It takes 6 years to get to $39 an hour. And so, saying base wage, people don't need to think that you get on the docks and you immediately start making $39 an hour.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's just not true. The base wage is $39 an hour after you've been there for 6 years, and obviously, if you start at $20 an hour, you're going to lose a lot of people in that 6 years. And they also don't work when there are no ships, right? If the ships aren't on the docks, they don't get paid. Also, some of these people don't even have a pension. Houston and Philadelphia ports, they don't have pensions. They are way behind on a lot of things from the West Coast ports. The West Coast ports actually do start at $40 an hour. You start immediately making $40 an hour. They do have a pension. And even some of the ports like Mobile and other places on the East and Gulf Coast that do have pensions, they're not nearly as good as the West Coast ILWU pension. So,
interesting piece of information. Last question here is unrelated to anything we've talked about. I just want to get your opinion on this. It'll become clear later in the program why I'm asking this. The little machines at concession stands in restaurants where the worker, literally, you go to them and say, can I have and I'm going to give you a perfect example. I was at the Florida Gator game down at Steve Spurrier Field and Ben Hill Griffin Stadium at the Swamp. I walked in, I said, give me a $20 24-ounce beer. And they did. And then the lady opened the beer, placed it on the stand, turned the little computer around, told me to insert my card. I inserted my card for my $20 beer, and it already had selected 25% tip. Do you tip in those situations?
I do. I hate it.
Do you tip at takeout? If you're going to like just a takeout restaurant to pick up? Holy cow! Okay, I refuse.
I worked in a restaurant for 3 years, so I've got a lot of empathy for those kinds of folks.
I deliver pizzas. I do too, but the person at the front counter handling a takeout order, come on.
I know. Well, I mean, you would be surprised at how little some of these people make. There's actually a strike going on and off right now in Philadelphia by Aramark workers who, like you said, sell $18 beers and get paid $10 an hour. And so, it's really just a way for these companies to shift some of the labor costs onto the consumers, but make it seem voluntary. And I hate it. It is not good.
I hate it. I hate it too. All right, Jacob Morrison, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.